This is Radio TV Phono Nut, and here's a Crosley Junk-O-Matic, stack-o-matic number 2. This is the nicer model with the hardwired AC power cord. I've already got the bottom cover pulled off, and we'll get a look at this real quick. We want to get a good look at that right there, made in China. Stack-o-matic Crosley model CR85, manufactured June 2009. Now, I believe this thing is totally dead. Like the other one, this switch turns the amp and main power on. And I'm getting absolutely nothing out of the speakers. And this powers the turntable on. And it's totally dead too. I haven't traced this out yet, but I figure that the step-down transformer is energized as long as this is plugged in, and they only switch the DC, the low voltage, off on here at the amp, which is stupid. They ought to have the primary of the transformer switched where it won't be energized all the time. So with that said, there's only a couple of things that I figure can cause this problem. Or maybe 3 things: bad power cord, bad power transformer, or something in the rectifier or filter circuits of the power supply. And let's see if we can figure out which. First thing I'm going to do is take my ohm meter and just measure the continuity across the power plug. I'm getting 111 ohms across the power plug, so that tells me at least that the primary winding and the power cord are good. And as I suspected, the primary is energized as long as the plug is in the AC outlet. It's not switched. Alright, so let's flip this up and look at the output. Alright, the pair of white wires is the secondary winding of the power transformer. There should be a low AC voltage there, and I'll check that now. I'm going to need both hands to do this, so I'll just turn the camera off and report my findings. Alright, I'm getting 10.8 coming out of the transformer, so that tells us the power cord and transformer are good. So that leaves the only possibilities, or let me rephrase that, there's plenty of possibilities when it comes to electronics. Just when you think you've seen everything, you'll run into something that totally throws you. But the next thing to look for is make sure the power switch is good, and make sure we have DC coming off of if the switch is good, make sure we have DC coming off of the rectifier, and if we have voltage there, then we'll just have to continue tracing. But I feel like it's a power supply issue because we're not getting amplifier action and we're not getting turntable action. So let's just keep searching. Well, the switch is good, but as you can see, there's nothing soldered to the terminals. It looks like they have the wires that would normally be attached to the terminals here connected together here. So I'm wondering if on this model, if they're possibly using the switch on the record changer to power the whole works, and they just have this jumped, but they were too cheap just to use a non-switched pot in this application. Okay, the switch on the record changer, which is this little doodad right here, seems to be making contact when I turn the function switch to the on position. So now I need to get this circuit board out and check for DC voltage on the output of the rectifier. I assume this uses 4 diodes and a bridge rectifier configuration. Well, they certainly don't make these things with service in mind. In order to get the board out, I have to remove this panel, and I can't get the panel out because of these cups here that the suspension springs on the record changer ride in. So, and yeah, this white stuff, that's a bit of mold there. This has been in my boneyard for the longest time, and it's going to need a thorough defunking once I get it working, if I get it working. And these appear to be in place with Chinese super glue, otherwise known as Chinese ejaculatory fluid. I see a lot of that in here. And I hear these stack-o-matics, the reason they're not as common as the manually operated turntables is because they were only built on Friday. That was the day they showed X-rated movies at the Crosley plant, so they could get more output of Chinese super glue from their workers there. So that's why you don't see as many of these as you do the Crosley cruisers and such, because these required more Chinese super glue to hold them together, and they got some kind of licensing deal with the adult movie industry where they could, you know, show the films on Friday without having to pay any kind of licensing fees or anything. So that's what they did. They just built these on Friday when they could show the X-rated videos and get more glue output from their workers. Well, I got one out. It didn't break, surprisingly enough. Well, I couldn't get the other one out, but I was able to finagle the board and get it out. And while I'm here, I just want to give this a good snort. Smell the distinct Chinese goodness here. All right, I'm getting 14.6 volts out of the bridge rectifier, so that tells me the main power supply is working. And when I switch it off, the charge is not bleeding off of the filter capacitor, and I know that because whenever I was tracing my connections out with the meter to find out where ground and all that was, I accidentally shorted the filter capacitor and got a little spark off of it. So when your filter capacitor is not discharging, that tells us that something downstream is not placing the proper load on the power supply and therefore not discharging the capacitor. This thing should have a voltage regulator, I would think, but who knows? And that's where I want to go next. I just noticed this had come loose from this connector here. It goes over around to the switch. I don't know whether it came out during my disassembly process or what, but it's out now, and obviously that would be a problem. And it's interesting to note that they're switching this on the DC output of the rectifier, so as long as this is plugged in, it's hogging juice. Even if it's turned off, it's hogging juice, because the power transformer and our rectifier and our filter capacitor, all that is active as long as it's plugged in. Now granted, it won't be drawing that much current, but it will be drawing current, and it's hogging juice. Now in the old days, the record changer would have had an AC motor which would have been wired to the primary winding of the power transformer. In some cases, the motor had a separate winding on the transformer, but in any case, when the unit was switched off, it was really off. It wasn't drawing any current. But most modern day electronics, if they're turned off, they're not truly off. They're still drawing current. So yeah, so much for energy efficiency. Granted, it's not drawing much current in standby mode, but it's still drawing current, and as long as it's plugged in, you know, it all adds up over time, and it can make a difference on your power bill. Alright, let's get this connection reattached and see what happens. Well, correction, I wasn't making good contact with my clip lead. Found another place to make the connection, and it cranked up. So now we got to figure out a way to fix this. May end up having to just eliminate this connector altogether and hardwire it to the board, because there's several others that are kind of loose too. Alright, what's going to happen? Okay, it's just barely turning. Yeah, like the other one, a lot of wow and flutter. Yeah, that belt shot. And I hope you can hear it. Sounds pretty good, but the other one, I messed around with it and got it to work better. Advertised it on the local Facebook baby clothes and cell phone pages for a cheap price, and somebody's supposed to be coming to get it, but you know how that is. People say they're going to come get stuff all the time, and then you never hear from them again. But that's fine. I'd rather put it on, sell it locally for a cheap price and get it out of here and not have to fool with boxing it and shipping it and all that crap. And just get rid of the darn thing. And here it is with the platter removed, very similar to a BSR. And here's the belt. It's very, very loose. In fact, it won't even, if I turn this upside down, it'll just about fall off. And if it was a good belt, it wouldn't fall off that easy. Like you might expect, they don't use the best quality belts on these, just cheap Chinese crap like everything else. Well, for whatever reason, they obviously ran out of Chinese hot glue that week. I guess the movie selections they were providing weren't that stimulating, so we're going to put some of this on there from Mr. Elmer, and that should keep the remaining connections inside of their connectors, and then maybe they won't just slide out and not work. Alright, there we go. We'll let that dry overnight, and that ought to keep those connections secure. And then the belt should be in later this week, and then we ought to have this thing patched up. Maybe I can put it on the local Facebook baby clothes and cell phone pages and get something for it too. I can tell this thing hasn't been used in quite a while because there's a divot/wear mark on the belt where it was resting up against the motor pulley. So there's no telling how many years this thing's been sitting idle. Heard reports of some of these things actually lasting, but most of them didn't, and when they stopped working, they usually got stuffed in a closet because it was a gift from so-and-so, and they didn't want to take the chance of so-and-so finding out that they got rid of it, so they stuffed it in the closet after it broke 3 months after they received it, and then after it sat in the closet for 6, 7, 8 years, then they dug it out and donated it to Goodwill or donated it to their church to put in a rummage sale or put it in their yard sale or whatever. And then somebody like me gets it and finds out what's wrong with it and patches it up. Okay, and I was mistaken about this master power switch being jumpered. Seems this switch has 2 sets of terminals, the ones on the back of the switch that are not used, and then the ones that connect to the PC board. And looking at this from a different angle, I could see that it's not jumpered, and when I turn it off, it does kill the whole thing, so it's wired just like the other one is. In other words, when the record changer shuts off, it doesn't kill the whole system like an older style record player generally would. You still have to cut the main power switch off on the volume control in order to kill the whole thing. And now I turn it on and it sounds like bad filter capacitor hum. I'm about ready just to throw this thing away. Sprayed the pots and they've got dead spots in them. Still staticky. So, I think what's going to happen here, like I've said before, I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on this junk, so this one is going to get gutted. What I might do is save the cabinet, and next time I find a record player with a trash case that has a decent little tube amplifier in it, I might just stick it inside of this case and be done with it. That'll be one way I can salvage a record changer and amplifier out of a case that would otherwise the whole thing would go to the trash.